Hey, Travel Treppers, this is JSE, and that's Brian Grosso. What's up, Brian?
What's up, man? How are you?
Good, good. Let me give people a quick background. We've been friends for a few years now. We've known of each other's work for probably a decade or more, but have become friends. And we have some interesting parallels in our life and our career. We're both adventure seekers. We both have made documentary movies. We've both written books, and we both are fitness entrepreneurs.
True, all true, yes.
And we both are martial artists.
Yeah, wow, that's a lot of
I know.
similarities. Wow,
I don't know why we're friends.
We're so cool.
Oh my God. All right, so check this out. So you guys, Brian does some really neat stuff, and I wanted to interview him because I think he will offer some cool insight for you as you develop kind of a new mindset to be what he calls audacious, and to be able to see the world, to do the different things you want to do, to develop what he has done, which is a lifestyle business, and what is really what's necessary to be a travel trep. And so we're going to go back in time. We're going to do the Wayback Machine here. Where did you travel as a kid, and what do you remember most?
Wow, that's a great. Okay, now my travel history is actually kind of an interesting job because I didn't travel as a child, virtually at all. My parents are the epitome of homebodies. My mom lives in the same house. Well, my parents still live in the same house that I was raised in, and my mom has lived there since she was 3 years old.
That's the same parallel I have. My parents are the same house too. Yeah.
71 years my mom has lived in the same house. She's 74 now. So I didn't travel anywhere. The first plane I got on in my entire life, I was 6 years old. My mom and my older brother, we went to Florida with a friend. And I was like just amazed at these flying contraptions and you could land and you were in a very different place.
Yeah.
But the next plane I got on, I was 23. 20 years later, almost 20 years later. So I had no history in travel as a child at all. But you develop a bug, and I developed it in a very unique way. I don't know if you want me to sort of tell the story of my travel history, but you know, being that was my conditioning of not really traveling much and being a homebody, I maintained that way. That was kind of my life until my early 20s. But I was working as the head strength and conditioning coach for the Canadian National Synchronized Skating Team, which is a form of figure skating. And, you know, we would travel to competitions in and around parts of Ontario and Quebec, which were all I lived in Toronto at the time. They're all just bus rides, 4 hours here, 2 hours there. But we did so well in the Canadian National Circuit this year. It was 1999, I believe. We qualified for the World Championships, which were in Gothenburg, Sweden. And I remember very distinctly the Canadian National Championships that year were in Montreal, which is where I live now. And we were on the bus ride home, celebratory. We just qualified for Worlds. And the head coach of the Canadian National team came up to me and said, you know, you've been such an integral part of what our successes have been this year. We need you to come to Sweden with us for on-site therapy and on-site training and just having your presence around. And there it was. 3.5 weeks later, I boarded a plane from Toronto to Paris and then Paris to Gothenburg, Sweden. And that's the first time I ever went anywhere of significance. From that experience, John, I built 2 businesses that were based on me traveling. I mean that when I started the IYCA, it was all about me traveling around the world, delivering seminars. And I turned over every stone possible to try and get booked into speaking gigs. And I ended up speaking in 2006. I was on the road for 43 weeks that year.
Wow. Czech
Republic, Sweden, Australia, New Zealand, Italy. I just went everywhere because I realized I could. It was fun. I absolutely loved it. An entire lifestyle business based on travel.
So, you know, it's funny because my first plane ride was at age 23.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. Spooky, you.
I know. Boo. So, yeah, the thing is, and my parents were homebodies as well. And some of it was that, you know, I grew up in a very middle-class family, and they weren't the resources to travel as much as they wanted to, or they wanted us to experience. The other thing is just that sometimes people just don't have that in their lifestyle when they're growing up. It's not in their vernacular, and it's not in their day-to-day way of thinking. But it's true, once you get that bug, and then you want to do it more. And some of it obviously is making the travel experience lighter, easier, more succinct, less burdensome. And that comes with experience and obviously using the resources that we have as well. Now, you're all about audacity, which I love, and to be audacious. So what does that mean, and how does that relate to someone going from a job or a career or lifestyle they dislike to any degree, to being able to travel and experience the world in a way that means something to them?
Yeah, no, this is brilliant, the questioning, because you actually pitched half the answer yourself, so I'm just going to formalize it. Audacity, not unlike selfish and not unlike ignorance, is a word that our society has decided is actually negative. To be audacious is almost like, I can't believe you had the audacity to be that mean.
Oh, yeah.
But audacity means bold. It means dare. It means, willing to live in an uncertain place for the potential of doing great things and leaving a legacy for yourself, your children, the world at large. That's the first part of audacity. But in terms of how you do it and why you do it, inside of FTR, really the entire basis of FTR, the company that Karen and I, my fiance and I run now, is about teaching people to change their story. And you are 23 years old, 23 years old. We had stories our entire lives based on conditioning that travel was not something we did because of financial means, or it wasn't in our mindsets to do so, or we didn't know how to make it work. That's just a story. And stories, I don't want to be slippery with this, but the story you tell is the truth you know. Meaning, we mistake story and truth all the time. I can't do it is not true. There's not an absolute truth to that. I don't believe I can do it. That's a story, but it's not true. And that's the mistake people make. So what we teach is, first of all, be aware of your story. Be aware of your story, and that's the most critical part. What is your story? Be aware of it, and recognize that the story is an option, right? There are no absolute truths. There are options that we choose to see. That's number one. Number two, be responsible for your story. In my case, I lived a life thinking I didn't want to travel because I wasn't exposed to it. And I didn't believe it was possible to trek around the world and actually earn a living doing so. So that was my story, but I didn't allow myself to be responsible for that story, as if somehow it was my parents' fault for being homebodies and that's what they conditioned me. No, it was my decision to adopt that story as a truth. So be responsible to that. Thirdly, release from it. Release from the story. And that's what you're talking about right now. How do we do this? Well, how we do it is, number one, we release from the story we think we know. And that leads from the fourth and most important part, change your story. How do you do it is a matter of releasing from the story you have in order to change it. So just a couple of clips on that. Travel is acumen-based, meaning it's a skill you learn. How to afford it, how to put it into your lifestyle, how to make money doing it. Even little things, John, like I've traveled everywhere at this point. I've packed exactly 2 suitcases in my entire life. I learned I didn't need a lot of stuff. And that might seem trite to people listening right now, but you being a traveler as well, you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes there's nothing worse than having to go to an airport, stand in a security line to open up your suitcase, take out the laptop, blah, 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 and then you get to where you're going. You've got to wait an extra 45 minutes for baggage claim to come through. I bypass all of that. I literally have like a little duffel bag with just a couple essentials, and I've learned how to, whenever I get where I'm going, get what I need beyond the essentials I have. That might seem small, but that was actually a major roadblock to me ever traveling in my life. Because the story I was conditioned by, the one I didn't take responsibility for, the one I didn't release from, was that, well, traveling's kind of a bitch. You got to pack your bags, and you don't. You just have to understand that once you throw the first stone or drop a pebble and make ripples in water, those ripples will kind of carry you. You don't have to know where they're going. Just follow them. You get good at this. You get good at understanding how to make it work.
You know, this is a real sidebar, but I'm thinking about packing as you're saying that stuff.
Yeah.
And in the airport in Orange County, there's a store that sells, you know, they had like board shorts. But this is a weird sidebar. But this is just an example, you guys, of how you need to think about this kind of stuff. I always think, how many different ways can I use this and benefit from it with the least amount of trouble?
Nice.
And so there's this clothing. I don't even know. It's made by, I believe it's Quicksilver, and then there's a few other, like, you know, surfwear brands that have it. It's like a microfiber that doesn't wrinkle. You could wear them on the golf course because they look cool enough, but you could swim with them in the ocean. They dry really fast. You can wad them up in a ball, and they don't wrinkle. And you can probably put 50 pairs in a suitcase.
Yeah.
And so, and I get the monochromatic darker colors, so if it gets a little spot on it when you travel, it doesn't ruin your day. And it also cleans easily. And it was $50 or something, nothing crazy. So, I mean, that's the kind of stuff, like when you're traveling, when you're packing, when you're doing all this kind of stuff. I use those shorts that I bought. By the way, I bought one pair in every color because now I have several different ways of simplifying my life.
Perfect. Yeah, right?
And I choose colors that go with other stuff, so it gives you a lot of mix and match options. Now we're doing fashion consulting for the busy traveler. It's awesome.
You know, it's funny. I was going to give you my toiletry. You know how you have to put all your toiletries in small baggies and all that? Or just don't take toiletries with you. Hotels have everything, and if you're really nice about it and just ask, they'll give you deodorant, toothbrushes, toothpaste, etc. I couldn't believe it because I'm kind of just like a gregarious guy who, I don't know, I'm just always nice. The first time I went to a hotel lobby, it was like, oh, I'm so sorry, I forgot my toothbrush. Like, do you have a gift shop where I can buy them? And she's like, oh, don't worry about it. And she gave me a toothbrush and toothpaste. I was like, okay, so I'm doing this every time now. I'm just going to go and plead stupid. I haven't taken toiletries anywhere for about 6 years.
Well, whatever, you know, I always like all the little extra goodies that if you just ask the nice lady who's cleaning the room, if you could get a little extra, you know, it's branding and marketing for them, and you're not overindulgent with it. I think it's just fine to do that.
Absolutely.
What do you say, aside from, you know, changing your story and all that kind of stuff, what do you say to someone who, here's the thing, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. People will say, well, that's you, but it's not me. And I'm not saying live my life or live your life, but I'm saying it's just an example that it can be done. You have to do it in a way and a level, you know, a level meaning how lavish your travels, how extensive your travels, the duration of your travels, in a way that works for you. And it's tiered, and it will change perhaps over time. But a lot of people say, well, that's you, but it's not me. And I'm not saying, like, I want to stay at this hotel and not this hotel. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying some people think that, well, that's someone else's life, but it's not me. And it's not that they don't want to. They truly don't think it's possible. What, you know, and I think it goes back to the story.
It does, yeah. It's funny you should say that because we spent a lot of time considering how to build the quote-unquote relative curriculum inside of FTR, but that's almost always what it comes back to, is that is the we call it the conclusion, judgment, definition, label game. That we can also insert blame in there, but those are the four big ones: conclusions, definitions, labels, and judgments that most of society is wrapped into. We see John Spencer Ellis doing this, and we conclude, well, he's lucky. He was raised into a family that sowed the seeds for him traveling his whole life. He's lucky that he was raised into a wealthy family. We conclude that we don't have those kinds of privileges that Brian Grasser or John Spencer Ellis had. We define ourselves as not equally able as John Spencer Ellis. We judge that, you know, it would be nice if I could live like that, but I can't. Those are the four hallmarks of a mindset that's going to get you nowhere. Absent conclusions, definitions, labels, and judgments, you're left with just a story. And that story is not true, it's a story. You and I came from similar upbringings, homebody, middle class, no vernacular for travel, no money for travel, and yet we made it work. I say this, John, and you know my story. I say this not to sound triumphant, because to me it's not triumphant. I retired financially free at the age of 37 years old, but it certainly wasn't because I was lucky. It was because of a game plan I executed and a belief that I could.
Yeah.
So my story is one, your story is one. Anyone who's listening right now who takes on what you said, well, that's their life, it's not mine. That's your story. It is nothing more than a story. And I think the thing I've always liked and respected most about you, John, is that I've not ever seen you give people a blueprint, and I like that, because our world is so blueprint craving. Like, marketers create them and consumers buy them. The just do this. The problem is that the just do this will only go as far as your story lets it. Whereas you're saying today, this is Brian's story, this is my story. Listen to our stories and apply them into your lives. That's where change is made. When it's the philosophy we understand, not the blueprint of how we got there.
Well, I think sometimes a blueprint is so rigid, sometimes in philosophy and sometimes in its actual structure, that it doesn't allow for the variables of individual interpretation and circumstance.
Perfect.
And so with that, people say, and that's when it gives them the opportunity to say, but that's not me.
Exactly.
And so because there's too much of a variance off this path that somehow we've supposedly created. So, I like giving the tools and the resources and the ideas and the strategies, and then say, according to who you are, where you're at, what is your ultimate goal? Then use these tools and resources as it's most appropriate to you. And one thing that I've learned from my coaches and mentors, Alan, Marilyn Sargent, is, like a lot of times people will have, like, they say, well, just imagine yourself already a millionaire. Well, I'm just using this example. Already imagine yourself as a successful world traveler. At a subconscious level, there's a premise that says that if your brain already interprets it as done, it will not be resourceful enough to do the things to get you there because it thinks it's already arrived. Okay, so it's true that sometimes you have to, imagine it and do the different things and the steps and the processes and yes, that's true. But if you already imagine yourself, people say, well, just imagine yourself, money falling out of the sky. Well, that's nonsense, because that doesn't happen. But if you imagine yourself, like, say, I have a business that is self-sustaining so I can be a traveling entrepreneur, and I'm able to spend 1 month a year on the road doing the things that I want to do. Then you say, okay, how did I get there? And then you work backwards, and then you have a roadmap. You have stepping stones to get there. But some people do it backwards, or they only. It's true you need to take one step at a time, but you need to know where you're going. But if you just say, okay, I'm there, but don't step backwards to where you are currently, you can't lay out the stepping path. Imagine like going through a garden and you're trying not to get your feet in the dirt or the grass. You have the stepping stones.
Right.
You have to lay them out, but sometimes it works better for people to lay them out going forward, as long as you know exactly where you're going. Otherwise, you're going to be meandering. Or you know your exact ideal destination, then you lay the stones backwards to where you're at. And to me, that's what's worked best. And sometimes people are just predominantly accessing one half of their brain rather than the other. They're thinking about all the details rather than just the big picture. And you need both, but if you're predominantly in one hemisphere rather than the other, you're either overwhelmed with the big picture, or you're caught in the minutiae of the details. And that's why it's so important to have these personal development skills to be able to cross-reference what's called hemispheric interpretation of the actual events. Yeah. And that's the process is called hemispheric integration. That's actually something we teach at the Spencer Institute. I don't want to get into the woo-woo stuff, but it's just the fact is it's true. It is what it is.
It's awesome.
Woo-woo's awesome.
It's awesome stuff. No, it is, because I mean, gosh, you and I could talk about the woo stuff probably for a long time. The unconscious realities, the plasticity of the brain, and how it can be reorganized and repatterned. But I love what you said, and I'm in agreement with you. I've always been a ready fire, aim kind of guy.
Yeah.
I start with the end in mind. And if I were to give even one piece of advice to people watching, I'd say make the first trip small to moderate in terms of like upheaving you financially or whatever it might be, and then book it, book it, and then believe. Believe is the wrong word, and I apologize for that. I believe there's a huge, massive difference between belief and faith, but understand what we've said. The acumen is something you build, and the greatest successes I've ever had in my entire life are ones that I started without knowing how I was going to get there, but knew what the end point was. So I would conceive the end point, and then I would backtrack along the way to where I started from. That's why I always say, book the trip. Amazing things happen when you're forcing yourself into a situation of making it work. People will sit forever deliberating, ruminating, thinking about all the logistical steps along the way, and they'll push that first booking back 2 years, 3 years, until it's something they're not even engaged with anymore. Book a trip, and then start figuring out how it's going to all work. That's something, and I don't advise that out of hand for everybody. Just my own story. That's worked remarkably for me in my life in almost every facet.
You know, you just clasped your hands together there. I wanted to share something with people. This is some cool stuff, you guys. It's going to trip you out, but I think it'll be helpful. So, Brian, I want you to just clasp your hands together like this, and then let me see on camera. Brian, is your right thumb on top pointing towards your left side?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so. Look at mine. Can you see how mine's the same?
Right side, yeah.
Right, okay. So that my right thumb is pointing towards my left. So you guys are going to trip out on this, okay? But this is the real deal. This is kind of a test for hemispheric integration. This is undeniable. So the way this works is whatever thumb is on top and whatever side that points to, that's which brain lead you are. It's not a matter of dominance, it's a matter of sequencing. So as an example, Brian and I are all big picture. We'll figure out the details later, okay? And if you notice, we're both this way. So our right thumb is on top, pointing towards the left side. So that if we're pointing towards the left side, that means we're left hemisphere dominant. If it was opposite, put your hands the other way. It doesn't feel good, does it?
It feels ridiculous.
Okay, so, and it feels weird. And you guys, by the way, it's different than this. You know, crossing your arms. It's a totally different thing. But so here's what I want to get at, you guys. And this is another similarity in why we do things in a similar way. Because our right thumb is on top, it points towards the left hemisphere. We're left hemisphere dominant, which is big picture thinking. Right hemisphere is all the details. You know, the more the creative side. This is more the analytical side. The left side is more analytical. So in doing that, we're able to get the big picture and then worry about the details later. So that's a matter of sequencing. That's why he and I are telling you the same story. Yeah. So here's the thing. If you're the opposite, and you can't change it because it's just who you are, and it's not good or bad, right or wrong. It's just who we are. But if you're the opposite, so your left thumb is on top and it points towards your right side, my hallucination is that you're caught up in the minutia. You're trying to figure out all the details, but you can't get to the big picture and get moving. If that's the case, I want you to close your left eye or cover it up, because that goes to your right hemisphere, and then you have to switch hemispheres and use your left hemisphere, which is big picture. And you'll be and do that as you are figuring out your trip or your big picture, your big audacious goal, and you'll be able to switch hemispheres and more easily be able to get the big picture. Now, it goes way beyond this, but it's a fascinating thing that is a neurological truth. So if you find yourself caught up in the minutia, then cover up your left eye. You can't access your right hemisphere. You'll have to switch to your left hemisphere, which is more big picture. And the same is true, like if you're all big picture, but then you never get anything done because you can't figure out the details, you don't want to do it, cover up your right eye. It'll shut off your left hemisphere. You'll have to access your right hemisphere, which means that you can be more creative and work out the details. Now, I'm oversimplifying. I'm oversimplifying, but it holds true and it's a way to get yourself unstuck. Remember also, there's a difference between being frustrated and being stuck. If you're frustrated, it means you haven't found the solution yet, but resources are available. If you're stuck, it means you don't have the tools and the resources.
That's some awesome woo-woo stuff right there, man.
I know, we just went woo-woo. It just happened.
Well, we tend to go woo-woo, you and I, on a regular basis. Nothing wrong. Nothing wrong. It's worked for us.
Oh my gosh. Hey, your picture's cutting out a little bit here. I want to wrap this thing up, but give your elevator pitch for FTR and what it is that you're doing and how you can help people. Yeah,
well, FTR, Free Thinking Renegades, freethinkingrenegades.com. Essentially, we are the art of inspired living. My fiance and myself, we live very inspired. We do an eclectic array of things. She's a model. She's an illustrator. She's a photographer. I write. We're currently working on a novel in the thriller mystery category. We just do crazy stuff because we love it, and that's what life's supposed to be about. So we help people release the barriers of their story and change their story to live as inspired as they possibly can.
And that can include seeing the world.
And it should include seeing the world. I agree wholeheartedly.
All right, so freethinkingrenegades.com.
Correct.
All right, cool. Hey, thanks for everything, including the woo-woo stuff, Brian Grosso.
Always a pleasure, sir.
All right, thanks, you guys. Please leave some comments below.